Hello, welcome back to the NFL DFS Slate Breakdown for Week 6. We're going to be able to go over everything, ownership matchups, and, some of the best plays on the slate and who to maybe fade from a chalk factor. All right, now before we get into it, I want to just say thank you. We've really been able to grow our channel fairly significantly recently, and I want to thank you guys for your liking, your commenting, your subscribing. It's helping us grow, and it's then allowing us to keep giving out content for free. We're trying to give out as much as we possibly can, so we appreciate it. So thank you guys. Continue doing what you're doing. If you aren't watching all of our shows, you should. We're having some really good prop shows. We just went 3 for 3 on the Thursday Night Football show. We have 2 Sunday prop shows out, one for Underdog, one for just main, sportsbook props. So I would check those out, absolutely. I don't think there's really much of the same props on either show, so you can watch both of them. But I do want to say thank you very much. And it's allowing us to grow, and hopefully more people kind of join us on the platform. $39.99 a month. It gets you access to everything we do. All the props, all the DFS, the optimizers, tools, ownership, everything. For all sports we cover. Nobody is as cheap as we are and gives away so much with it. Now, let's get into the fun. We got a slate to talk about here. Got another Sunday of football. Can't believe it's already week 6, but it's here. The season's flying by. We have some more data now to work with, and that is going to, give us some little more success. That's one of the things for me. I generally have later season success than earlier. So this is the time where I really need to buckle down because it's starting to be the time where I do well. All right. Now, some important games. We got Arizona at the Rams. 48.5 game total. Highest game total on the slate. Obviously is going to get some interest and be a fairly chalky game. Next highest game total. Panthers at Miami. 47.5 game total. Now, Miami is big time 14-point favorites. So they have the highest game total of the week. Need to have some interest there. Now, we have 4 games, really, that I think are very interesting and could end up being the highest game total of the week. Really 3, but, maybe for another one. First one being Jacksonville at Indy, 44-point game total. It is the fastest game of the week, or at least projects to be, based on how quick these guys run their next play. Obviously, which just leads to the ability of getting more plays out. So, Jackson versus Indy, I am very interested in this game, and it's not getting much ownership. The next fastest is New Orleans at Houston. Now, we've seen CJ Stroud be able to put up some solid games. Now he's going against a defense that is a pass funnel, meaning they allow passing to happen against them. Also, we have injuries on that wide receiver core. So I think this game is a little interesting. While I think it's doubtful that they are the highest game score of the week, there's a path to success, at least because they are one of the fastest games. And then we got Seattle at Cincinnati. This is likely the 3rd fastest game of the week, and there's obvious real attention or that it could be a shootout here. Both teams have big play threats and can throw the ball. So I think that game is interesting. And lastly, Vikings at Bears. I think those are the main games we are targeting this week. And we'll kind of look into that to see how ownership breaks down, where we might want to fade some chalk, where we might want to go with some chalk and whatnot. Let's get into it. All right. So as always, go over to the ownership tab here. Matthew Stafford, highest game total of the week. He makes a lot of sense. The one thing I do need to bring up, last year and a half, he's had one 20-point game. Nothing above 20. That is very scary for me, being that he's chalk and 6,100, so he's barely hitting 3x, and you really need 5x to be winning tournaments. So I don't know if the ceiling is there with everybody going there. I might be hands off on that one. Baker Mayfield, I think, is interesting. He does give you past the 4-5x. We have seen him beat up, Saints put up 24, Chicago he put up 21, and Lions D, is beatable. Evans is back. I think it's very interesting to go Mayfield. I just don't love the ownership here. Fields, I love this week. I think there's a real path to his success, and I love some of the plays on the Vikings side. So if I'm playing Fields, this is a one that I might game stack and be pretty heavy on, on this game. You could do that with Cousins too. I just think there's more likelihood that Fields has a good game or a ceiling game, a break the slate type game because of his running ability, where Cousins is going to need to have 4 touchdowns and 350 plus yards, to break the slate. And it's just not as likely, even though the Bears D is terrible. So I think Fields makes a lot of sense. I definitely like him and his pass catchers and running backs. Joe Burrow, look, he torched the Cardinals, but now he gets the Seahawks, who actually allow more passing yards per game than the Cardinals. So I think you really got to be interested in Burrow here. He also is likely going to get T. Higgins back. So there should be ways to be able to get different because Burrow just has more pass catchers available. He's also not that high owned, so I think he is extremely interesting this week. Tua, look, at under 10% with the highest team total, and they're without A-Chain, so they may have to rely on throwing the ball a little bit more. I think Tua makes a ton of success on DraftKings. He is pricey. He's going to have 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, but it is absolutely in the range of outcomes in this matchup. Cousins is interesting to me. I just might want to use Fields to stack this game instead of Cousins. Although you can do Cousins, say Osborne and Addison, and it's a very inexpensive stack and potentially get all of the touchdown work for the Vikings. So I think it is interesting there. Indy at Jacksonville, one of my favorite games of the slate. I don't love Minshew because there's just not that many ways for him to really break the slate, but I think Lawrence is extremely interesting. Ritter has some interest due to the fact that he is at home and that Washington secondary is awful. He's had 2 good games. Oops, not Lawrence. Ritter has had 2 good games at home too, where he was 4 or, almost 6x versus Houston last week. So I think he is absolutely interesting. And there's some real paths to his success there. CJ Stroud, I think, also has some pass here. He's had 2 25 weeks, 1 21-point week, has yet to throw an interception. That's a pass funnel D. I like Stroud a little bit, especially if the Saints are able to get up a little bit early in this game, because we have seen when they do, the Texans are willing to open up that offense and really start throwing, and that is the chance of a blow up slate breaking type game is the Saints get up and Texans have to speed up a little bit more. Geno's absolutely interesting. He's no ownership, 5,700, so 600 less than Burrow, and same game environment is interesting with some really good receivers and really good guys you can bring back with. I think he does have some interest. Over on the FanDuel side, we got Tua, highest owned. Don't like him quite as much as the highest owned, but it makes all the sense in the world that he is. It's the highest game total. And, without A-Chain, they may not rely on the running backs quite as much. However, playing the ownership against everybody, this is the spot where I like Mostert a lot more because it crushes that Tua ownership lineups and just gives you a little bit more leverage on the field going with Mostert. Lawrence, I already said that. Stafford, same thing as on DraftKings. I just don't know if the ceiling is there. Now, at 11% owned, he is much more interesting to me, but I worry about the ceiling. Fields, I like. Hurts, meh. Minshew, meh. Obviously, I like Cousins. He is pretty expensive, but he's had some real good ceiling games this season, and it could continue, especially if they do want to trade him. Then they're going to just let him air it out and put some numbers on the board, right? Get as much as they absolutely can for him. They're already 1-4, so who knows? Joe Burrow, going low owned. I love that spot also. So same deal there. So now let's get over to the running back spot. We got Alvin Kamara, Kyren Williams. Roschon Johnson is out. Excuse me. The ownership just has not updated yet. So understand, you can actually probably just put Foreman in there for Roschon. He is going to be super high owned, and it makes a lot of sense. The one thing I will say with Foreman is that he's not a pass catcher, so he may only be in on first down, second down, and that obviously hurts his overall projection. Kyren Williams, absolutely love the work that he's getting, especially in the goal line. Alvin Kamara, 32% owned, is a little hard for me to get behind. Reason being, he's had 3 20-point games over the last year and a half. He is in a very good matchup, but his projection is this high because his floor is high. It's not so much that he is likely to break the slate. So I do warn you a little bit. I do think this projection is probably weighing a little bit higher on, his possible ceiling than it should be. Raheem Mostert, I love this week, especially if he is lower owned, especially on FanDuel where Tua is more expensive. It does look like Jeff Wilson is going to be doubtful, so it is the Mostert show. Another guy that could get work there is Sullivan Ahmed, which he's interesting. He's shown a little bit of juice when he's got the call, and it's not going to be 100% Mostert show. It'll probably be 60% him, 40% Ahmed. Etienne, I love. He's in a great spot. Gets all the work and is absolutely interesting. Montgomery, this guy's role is just great. He has the red zone usage is insane. Also, Gibbs is doubtful, and with that, he has been involved in the passing game. So it gives you a little bit better of a floor. He had 6 targets last week. While it is a tough rushing matchup, I can't talk, versus the Bucks, I think there is some upside because he can fall in the end zone once or twice. He can catch, say, 2 to 4 passes, give you a little floor there. And he's a legit rusher, and they have a really good offensive line. So even in a good versus a good rush team, I think there's paths to his success there. Pierce, I love the role. I love the ownership. It's a tough matchup for him. But at 5,100, I still would say there is a little bit of interest here. Look, 20 carries last week, 24 the week before, 14 and 3 receptions the week before that. There's a real path to him being able to put up a slate-breaking score at 5,100. The Saints are good versus the run, so it's not quite as likely, but I think with his workload, that breakout game is going to happen soon. Jacobs is interesting. His workload is obviously there, but the big thing with him, he's catching a ton of passes, but he is seemingly starting to get it going. Only 17 for 58, but 8 receptions for 81 versus the Chargers. 20 for 69, but 5 receptions and 20 yards versus the Packers. I think we're going to get more of this game. So solid, possible receptions, really good work on the ground. It's just, can he get into the end zone or not? That's been the thing that has not allowed him to have a huge games this year like he had last year. But I think they're coming. I think he's getting into football shape. Remember, this is a guy that did not have a full training camp. Minnesota running backs, I think, are very interesting. The issue is I think that is working towards a 50-50 split, and it's probably like 55-45 right now. Makes Madison and Akers both kind of there, but not really. Just a low likelihood of them having a huge ceiling game because of that split workload. I don't think it's the game for Bijan. Ramondre is losing work. Really tough for me to get there. The one thing I will say is he had a ton of passing work last year. Just hasn't been there this year. Right now, this Patriots offense is just hard to get behind. Walker makes a lot of sense at this ownership. And DeAndre Swift. Look, the Jets looks very scary on paper, but they've actually been giving up some points to the running back, especially ones that can catch the ball. Swift can catch the ball, and they've started using him more and more in that manner. He had 6 targets last week. If he, keeps getting 6, there's going to be more real big breakout games for him. So I definitely like that spot. And FanDuel side, Mixon being high owned is crazy to me. He's had 1 week over 20 points over the last year and a half. I just can't bet on that with high ownership, so he is a no for me. Foreman is going to be high owned, not Roshan, and he's cheap. There are definitely paths to him failing though. Being a first, second down running back, if they get behind, he might just not be on the field. So that is your reason to fade Roshan. Josh Jacobs went over him, makes some sense. Kyron makes some sense. Alvin Kamara at 12%, I'm much more likely to play him than I am on the other side. Mostert, he is extremely pricey, but look, with Jeff Wilson being doubtful, I think there's a real good shot for Mostert to have a good game. So I like him a lot at this ownership. Walker, Etienne, both make a ton of sense as well at low ownership, as well as DeAndre Swift over here. So now let's get over and look at some wide receivers quickly. Look, Kirk, Chase, Kupp all make a lot of sense. The one thing I will say is that Kirk doesn't have Zay Jones, or Zay Jones is doubtful. So I understand him being high owned. He's more for sure to get targets. Chase, he's going to have T. Higgins back this week. Obviously takes away from Chase's ability to get targets a little bit. T is a beast. So I like Chase. Don't like him quite as much with T being back. With that being said, I think T is very interesting as a pivot. Cooper Kupp. There's a lot of ways that Stafford can go with that ball now. Higbee, Atwell, Nakua, Kupp. So while I do like Kupp, and I think he is absolutely their wide receiver 1, and he showed it with 12 targets, 8 and 118 yards, I don't think it's absolutely a necessity to go there. I think there's other ways you can get exposure to this offense. Love Drake London this week. I think he is in an amazing spot. At 20% owned, I am a little wary. He has major paths to failure, one of which is if the Falcons control this game, they're just going to be running downhill all game long and just leading to not many attempts for London. Now, there's also real paths to success for London at only 4,800. Look, he had 19 points on 7 targets and a touchdown in week 2. He had 9 targets for 6 for 78 versus Houston last week. And this Washington Redskins defense secondary is way worse than anybody he's faced. So I do like London, and there's real paths to his success. Don't love seeing the 20%, but it's not enough to make me not play him. Just might not play as much of him. Love Osborne at 4,400. With that, look, if he's 19% owned and you're getting Addison at Where's Addison? Right here, 3.5% for 1,300 more. I'm going to go with that 3% all day long. I think Addison is a legit receiver. He is Stephon Diggs-like, high draft capital. It is his time to shine. While I love Osborne, and I really do like Osborne, I've already made prop bets on both of these guys at their respective ownership. I like this Addison play much, much more. Like, I don't think that Osborne is 6 times the play that Addison is. And that's what it breaks down to. I think Addison is in a great spot to smash. Tyreek, obviously interesting. He's an every week consideration. Downs is getting a ton of targets every single week. He's, in the 5+ target range at 4,100 in a game we like. At least has some consideration. The problem is he's got to get in the end zone, and I don't know if that's going to happen. Hasn't happened yet. Could happen, but I think he's probably going a little over-owned at this point. Marquise Brown, 11% owned. Huge target share for his team in one of the higher scoring games of the week. I think he makes all the sense in the world to have, especially at only 5,300. Jacoby Myers, I love. This Vegas offense is very interesting this week versus the Patriots. The Patriots are just an absolute mess. Allowed over 30 points 2 games in a row, and not even to great offenses. They could do it again against Vegas, who, look, McDaniels is a Belichick disciple, so he may want to take it to Belichick. Amon-Ra St. Brown is another low-owned guy that I love, as well as Calvin Ridley and Devontae Adams. Tutu Atwell you can get different with. Puka Nacua you can get different with. And all of those guys, and this is why I'm not as in love with Kupp this week, is because there's so many guys on that Rams offense you can use to get different with and, not eat the chuck with Kupp. While he's in a great spot, there's just a lot of mouths to feed these days. Zay Jones likely out. He is doubtful. And I also do definitely like Mike Evans and Addison. We got to talk about this Houston wide receiver spot a little bit too. Tank Dell is out. So Nico Collins, Robert Woods, tight end Schultz all get a little bump in an interesting game environment. Wide receiver side on FanDuel, I actually like Evans more than I like Godwin. Godwin is getting the ownership now because he had 11 targets last week or in week 4, but I think he is more of that 5 to 8 target guy in this offense, and I think Evans is the one that has the true upside. The other thing is that in that game, Evans versus Lattimore, Evans always struggles versus Lattimore. Those two just go at it, and he wasn't fully healthy either, so now he is a full go. Not going against Lattimore. I think the targets come back to him, the 8 to 12 target range. JSN, he's not quite getting the targets. He's going to have a breakout game at some point. Not sure if this is the week. Adams, gotta love. Anybody on this list here that I talked about earlier, I do think is interesting. Pittman's getting the targets with Minshew. They're going to throw the ball, so he's a little more interesting with Minshew. So many different ways to go on this slate. It's pretty wild. All right, tight end wise, DraftKings, Pitts, Hawkinson, Ingram, Logan Thomas are getting all of the ownership. I think Pitts is a fairly easy fade at high ownership, unless you are saying stacking with Ritter. The reason being is, one, Jonnu Smith is there, who's actually getting more targets and playing more. I don't think Pitts is fully healthy. And so I just think there's a lot of ways to get off Pitts, and I'm not inclined to follow that ownership. Hawkinson, I think he has a real path to being the tight end 1 at the end of this year. Kelsey obviously is his competition at that. But without Jefferson, he's already getting a lot of targets, 8 to 11 most weeks. And without Jefferson, he's going to be assured that his ADOT might actually get a little bit lower or higher as well, which is obviously interesting. He's in play. Ingram is in a game environment that I like without Zay Jones. Dalton Schultz is my lower owned cheap guy that I am extremely interested in this week. So Tank Dell left last week, and what do you know? Schultz got a ton of targets. I think because of the two of them, Schultz and Dell, play in a similar space. They're, more of the slot type areas. I think Dell is really hurting Schultz, and without Dell, Schultz, I think, gets a big bump up. So I think he is interesting. Laporte is interesting. Higbee is interesting. All of those guys, I think, are very interesting at low ownership. And then on the FanDuel side, Hawkinson's getting all the ownership, as he probably should, but Ingram's interesting. And Jodu Smith, Schultz are all interesting. On FanDuel, it's not as big of a deal to go down in salary just because, going down high fours versus 6.7K isn't a huge difference, but that Hawkinson projection is just going to be so much harder or higher than those guys. It's going to be hard to get to some of the lower guys using an optimizer unless you force them in on FanDuel. But I think there are some interesting plays over there. D-wise, look, 49ers, Eagles, and Dolphins are absolutely the plays of the week. But everybody's going there. Some other plays that I think are possibly interesting. The Buccaneers, maybe. We have seen that Goff struggles outside, can struggle away. They have a good run D, so Goff might have to throw, which breeds, possible interceptions and whatnot. And then, yeah, that's there's not much here. You could do the Raiders, but their D sucks. It's just the fact that Patriots offense is totally a mess right now. FanDuel side, everybody loves the Raiders there, and I'd be staying away at high ownership for them, but I do like the Niners. I like the Eagles. Texans are a little interesting. And maybe the Falcons. Maybe Tampa Bay once again. Defense is just a crazy one for me, and I hate, following a chalk deep, but sometimes you just got to. It's a kind of a weird week. On FanDuel, you absolutely could do Miami D versus Carolina, though it's not really popping up. All right, matchup tool. A lot of the guys we like are high on the matchup tool. Cousins is there. Fields is there. Lawrence is here. There's a lot of interesting ways. Mayfield is there. Tua is low on the matchup tool, and thus probably why he's getting some of the lower ownership on DraftKings here. But it's not like quarterbacks have done bad versus Carolina. They just haven't had to do much. So if, Miami is like, hey, we're not going to rely on the running game as much. Tua, we need you to beat him. He absolutely can beat up this team, so I wouldn't look too much into him being lower on this. Teams just have been able to run all over Carolina. And that's probably what happens again, but I think there is a path to Tua being able to get there. Running back wise, so Ingram is off the injury report. He is going to play. He is expected to be the starter versus the Rams. So I think he is interesting. His ownership is going to go up significantly. We've had, several running backs do decently versus him. They're just not crushing the Rams on the ground. And I don't think Ingram changes that. Williams, Mostert, Swift, all have talked about we like. This Madison Acre spot is very interesting. There is path to success there. It's just which one of them does it. The workload's weird. Kamara in a decent spot. Walker, Etienne, Jacobs, all guys we have talked about here. All are interesting, as well as Hubbard. The good thing about Hubbard is he can catch passes, and a lot of the guys that have done well versus the Dolphins have been the pass catching running backs. Tampa Bay, talked about them being a good rush D, and they are, but they have also allowed some success, especially with dump downs. So I wouldn't totally forget about Montgomery, just don't like it as much. CMC, it's his toughest matchup so far of the year. Now, if we go to wide receiver 1, London Ridley, we absolutely love. Garrett Wilson, we didn't talk about him. He is a very, very good wide receiver on a team that likely has to throw a lot. Eagles also could be without Darius Slay. So I think there is some path to success here for Wilson. He pops up on the matchup tool, and we have seen, week in and week out, some low-owned guys high on the matchup tool have done really well. Chase, Amon-Ra, literally all of these guys we've talked about and we have some interest in. Panthers are going to have to throw a lot, so Thielen's, in there. Addison, I love this week. Wide receiver 2-wise, Lockett is definitely interesting. Godwin, a little bit. Higgins, I love in this spot. Look, Atwell crushed them. Reynolds crushed them. I think that Higgins can absolutely do that as well. Same with Puka getting off first, the Cardinals, or Jacoby Myers. So many different ways, and KJ Osborne's popping up a little bit as well. So a lot of very, very interesting pieces. And if we go to the tight end tool, Hawkinson, Conklin. Conklin is a little interesting because the Eagles are terrible to tight end, and Jets probably have to throw a little bit. And it's either going to go to Wilson or Conklin because they don't have much else. Lazard is there, but he's not winning you a DFS. If Conklin gets a touchdown, he could. Ingram, interesting. Laporte, interesting. Schultz, I have said I like Schultz, and I will stand by that, but I do need to bring up this aspect. He is the lowest on the tight end rankings. Henry got shut out. Otten didn't do anything. Musgrave had a decent game. Hurst had a terrible game. Okonwa had a terrible game. The one thing I will say is they haven't played anybody tight end wise, even dating back to last year. Conklin, Higbee, Firemouth, like the tight ends they faced aren't anything scary, which definitely goes into play of these rankings. I will stand by. I still like Higgins or Schultz. I think the targets are going to go there. All right, guys, that will do it for us today. So many interesting ways to go on this slate and so many good spots to attack. Wish you guys all the luck in the world this week. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our videos. Helps me out a ton, helps us out a ton as we just are trying to look to grow our platform. Thanks, guys. Have a good week. Good luck.